had to guess, I would say that Congressman Joe Wilson of South Carolina is probably about 9 minutes into his 15 minutes of fame. The 15 minutes of fame he earned for screaming at the president this week.
The reforms I'm proposing would not apply to those who are here illegally. It's not true.
Congressman Wilson not only earned himself a death ray stare down from the dais for that, his mom, or actually, I'm sorry, John Boehner, did make him apologize for it.
I, last night, heard from the leadership that they wanted me to contact the White House and state that my statements were inappropriate. I did.
The president, for his part, said that he was happy to accept the congressman's apology.
I'm a big believer that we all make mistakes. He apologized quickly and without equivocation, and I'm appreciative of that.
And it all might have ended right there. Except that ever since his official apology, Congressman Wilson has dedicated himself to making sure everyone knows he was only apologizing for his bad manners, not for actually being completely wrong.
I'm very grateful that the White House, in talking with them, they indicated that they appreciated the call and that we needed to have a civil discussion about the health care issues. I'm happy to discuss the health care issues, and in particular on the issue, which I think is very important, of whether the bills cover would include illegal aliens or not. Indeed, the bills that are before Congress would include illegal aliens.
You know, I hate to rain on Congressman Wilson's me parade here, but the bills under consideration in Congress don't provide coverage for illegal immigrants. They just don't. And yet, two conservative Democratic senators, Kent Conrad of North Dakota and Max Baucus of Montana, said after Congressman Wilson's scream heard round the world that they want to reconsider language in the bill that concerns illegal immigrants. According to reporting today in Time magazine, Senator Conrad said after a Thursday morning meeting, quote, "We really thought we'd resolved this question of people who are here illegally. But as we reflected on the president's speech last night, we wanted to go back and drill down again. We thought it was resolved by the language that says, and I quote, 'No illegal immigrants will benefit from the health care tax credits.'" That's on page 4. But after that guy screamed at the president, we thought we should do more to make sure he was getting everything he wanted. Yes, Senators Conrad and Baucus are not only rewarding the tactic that Joe Wilson used, they're also implying that Joe Wilson was right, and Joe Wilson was not right. What Senator Baucus and Senator Conrad are doing here has a name. It's called caving. Caving to a hysterical, phony, alarmist guy who screamed at the president and is now using the fact that he screamed at the president to raise campaign funds on the internet machine. And the caving is not limited to the Senate, nor is it limited to the immigrant issue. Why, for example, are the White House and Democrats in Congress now saying they would happily cave on the public option for health reform, agreeing without even a fight, including here on this show in my interview with David Axelrod right after the president's speech, agreeing that they would happily subject the public option to a trigger?
I believe that there'll be some sort of public option in the final legislation. Whether it comes with a trigger or not, I don't know.
When you hear public option with a trigger, think we're never actually going to get a public option. Why are they doing this? Joining us now to explain is Syndicated columnist David Sirota. His Creator Syndicate column out today concerns the so-called trigger mechanism. David, it's great to have you back on the show. Thanks for coming back.
Thanks for having me, Rachel.
So you make the case today in your column that adding a trigger mechanism to health care reform essentially means giving up on the public option. Why do you make that case?
Because we know that the history of triggers in legislation, both healthcare legislation and budget legislation, trigger is a euphemism for killing a bill. The most recent example of this is actually on a healthcare reform bill, prescription drug importation, allowing Americans to import prescription drugs from other industrialized nations. Every other industrialized nation allows its citizens to import prescription drugs. What happened was this bill had wide popular support, just like the public option. And what ended up happening was the pharmaceutical industry convinced the leadership of the Congress and both the Clinton and the Bush administration to put in a trigger that basically said that the bill could only go into effect if the HHS secretary said that prescription drugs from other countries were safe. Now, what ended up happening was, of course, the HHS secretary did not pull that trigger, not because the drugs aren't safe. I mean, as Governor Tim Pawlenty, the Republican of Minnesota, said, he was a backer of importation. He said, if they're unsafe, where are the dead Canadians? No, they didn't pull the trigger because the pharmaceutical industry, the health industry, put the trigger in to make sure that it wouldn't be pulled, just like in the public option debate, the same insurance lobbyists are working with the same White House and Democratic officials to put in a trigger to make sure that there is no public option.
So you're saying that the trigger is something that is sort of understood inside the Beltway, understood in Washington, as a way to seem like you're saying yes to something while you're also making sure that it never really has to happen. And it's happened before on healthcare.
That's exactly right. What ends up happening is, again, the public option is as popular, probably more popular than polls showed drug importation to be. And so what the trigger did on importation, like it would do on the public option, it would allow legislators to say that they're voting for the public option, but really voting for something that whose language makes sure that what they say they're voting for, what their press releases say they're voting for, what they're going to be celebrating voting for, actually doesn't become a reality.
It seems doubtful that any kind of reform is going to get Republican votes anyway, David. So why do you think the White House is proactively offering up a compromise like this? Why are Democratic senators proactively offering to do something like this? Do they really not want a public option at all, or is this a preemptive caving to Republicans that aren't going to come their way anyway?
Well, you've got two messages coming out of the White House. One, that the Democrats in the Congress should go it alone. The other, that Democrats in the Congress should water down the bill to get Republican votes. Obviously, those two messages don't make sense. If you're going to go it alone, why water down the bill? The answer is because the White House and the Democratic leadership doesn't want to go after conservative corporate Democrats who are tied to the insurance industry, the Max Baucuses of the world. So while President Obama will sort of attack or criticize progressives a little bit in his speech, and he'll go after Republicans in his speech, he doesn't seem interested. He doesn't seem courageous enough to go after the real obstacle in this debate, which are the conservative corporate Democrats, the Max Baucuses who've taken millions and millions and millions of dollars from the industries that don't want a public option.
Syndicated columnist David Sirota, thanks so much for joining us tonight. I feel like I understand better than ever why it is that progressives in Congress who've taken a stand for the public option say they don't want a trigger. Thanks for helping us understand it, David. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.